I figured since there's such a critically divisive film out right now called Glass, I would get into some of the movies that have rotten scores on Rotten Tomatoes, but I actually sort of enjoy them, and some of them I even love. There's tons of movies that people consider guilty pleasures, but I don't even consider these guilty pleasures. I just legitimately love these, and they just so happen to have rotten scores on Rotten Tomatoes. These aren't listed in any sort of particular order, just off the cuff and whatnot. But yeah, some movies are came out when I was young, some came out recently. It all depends. So let's get into it. The first movie on my list is a movie that came out when I was just a young lad, and that is a Goofy movie. Has a 44 on Rotten Tomatoes, and I think it's totally undeserving of that. The fact that this doesn't have it above like a 70 is mind-boggling to me. It starts off with one of the best musical numbers of any animated movie ever, honestly. The After Today musical number, and there's tons of memorable musical numbers throughout the movie. I think it's just a really touching movie about a father and a son. It's a really underrated Disney flick. I know a lot of people don't even remember this movie probably, but I think if you were raised around this era, if you were 5 or 6 when this came out, you still bump to some of those songs. They are really, really good songs. They're not like ironically either. Like they're legitimately good songs. So I think it's undeserving of that score, but that's just me. I don't know what the critics saw in it that I didn't, but I truly enjoyed this movie a whole lot. Next up is sort of a recent one. It came out in 2011. That is James Gunn's Super. It is my favorite James Gunn movie, and I actually bought this one on a whim at Walmart one day because I really enjoyed his first big feature debut, which was Slither. So I just bought this. It had a cool case. I liked Rainn Wilson, and the movie kind of blew me away. I think tonally it's a bit jarring for people. The tone's going from really goofy and comedic to borderline cartoonish at times, to the point where it starts with an opening credits of cartoon to very serious subject matter. The movie gets pretty deep towards the end. The climax especially is very brutal and gruesome. I think this is what a lot of people wanted out of Kick-Ass. Kick-Ass just sort of formed into a regular comic book movie towards the end. This doesn't. This shows the brutality of what this world would be like if superheroes and supervillains existed, and the ending gets me every time. Like, I really love this movie. It has a 49 on Rotten Tomatoes. That's crazy to me, but I definitely think it has an audience. It's a niche film, but I love it. This is the only movie on here that I would probably give an A+ to. Next up is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Most people love this movie. It's visually spectacular. It has a very memorable performance from Johnny Depp. The movie is very short on plot, but whenever the visuals, the set pieces, and the production design and the acting is this good and it's this funny, I don't think it needs much of a plot. It's just a guy that's high for 2 hours, and that's all you really need. The Big Lebowski gets by with having a very thin plot, and that's deemed as a masterpiece to some people. So I think Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is in the same realm as that. It's a really enjoyable film. It's not something I turn on every year, but the few times that I've watched it, I've gotten a real big kick out of it. Next up is a comedy classic in my book, and that is Wet Hot American Summer. It has a 34% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is crazy. I think if this came out today, it would definitely get good reviews, because the series that came out on Netflix has really good reviews, and it has legitimately the same kind of humor in it as the movie did. So I guess comedically the movie was ahead of its time, I guess. It does play some of that anti-comedy that we've grown to know a little bit more of today. But yeah, I think critics, maybe they didn't understand the movie. I'm sure there's still an audience that doesn't like the movie, but it gave a lot of people their big start in the movie world. Bradley Cooper's in this movie, Amy Poehler, Paul Rudd, just a few names out of dozens of big names that you see on sitcoms and in movies nowadays. I love this movie, and I love the shows that Netflix brought. If you haven't seen Wet Hot American Summer, you should definitely check it out. Next is The Waterboy. I'm not someone that goes around claiming that I love Adam Sandler movies, but in this era of Adam Sandler in the mid to late 90s, I think he had a pretty good track record of good comedies, and the Wedding Singer got pretty decent reviews, so I couldn't include that on here. But I think out of this, Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore, this is the funniest and probably the best, and it has a 35 on Rotten Tomatoes. And there's lines in this movie that I still find myself quoting and not even realizing it. So that has to mean something, that it has that much lasting power to where people are still quoting lines from it. I know it's stupid, and I know Adam Sandler isn't like a comedic genius, and it's probably actually the side characters that steal the show most of the time. But I think it is a very memorable comedy. Yet again, not a masterpiece, but very funny and memorable. Now, these next couple aren't necessarily movies that I love, but I definitely think they went under the radar, and they're better than what the reviews lead you on to believe. And that the first one here is Observe and Report, which is a Seth Rogen movie that nobody watched in like 2009, I think is when it came out. Marketed as a as a very goofy mall cop movie, sort of like Paul Blart, and ended up being a really dark character study about a guy with mental illness, and it's more reminiscent of Taxi Driver than it is Paul Blart Mall Cop. I think that caught a lot of people off guard, and just the sheer audacity of this movie to go to the places where it goes with the violence and the graphic nudity. I don't love this movie, but I do think there's something there. I think it's a solid B plus movie. That's just me though. And the last movie I want to talk about is a movie that I absolutely don't love. But it has to mean something when every time I watch this movie, the end of the movie makes me cry. And that is 7 Pounds, starring Will Smith. Yeah, I liked it. I actually legitimately really liked this movie at a younger age when it came out in 2008. I was 18 years old. So I played into that emotional manipulation. I thought that the twist was cool. Come to find out now, it sort of eggs on what the plot of the movie is. It takes too long to get to the meat of it, and it's just convoluted. But the end of this movie really works. I think a lot of it plays into that Ennio Morricone score that plays at the end. He's not even the composer of the film, but they use a piece of his score at the end. I think it all just comes together really nicely at the end. It gets me emotional every time. And I think that has to count for something. Not necessarily a great movie or even a good movie, but I don't think it's deserving of 26%. I think it's pretty well acted. It's just the plot is a bit convoluted, but I think the emotion definitely pays off. So they are just some of my favorite movies with bad Rotten Tomatoes scores. Some of them I like more than others. Some of them I barely even like, but I feel like they needed a mention. What are some of your favorite movies that have Rotten Tomatoes scores? Leave your comment down below, hit that subscribe button, and thank you for watching.